Hi, my name's Steve Bartlett, and welcome to my show called Fightback. And tonight we have the pleasure of having my good friend, Suzie, God, what's that last name?
Cichon.
Suzie Cichon. But I call you Suzie Mac.
Yep.
Because, one, your last name used to be McAnally.
Correct.
And you're Scottish.
Yes.
And you can call everybody from Scotland something Mac if you wanted to.
Pretty much.
Okay, great.
We'll go with that.
Okay, well, thanks for being on the show. And I'm really glad that you came on the show tonight, because if you weren't on the show, I would actually had to have prepared a show.
Oh.
I'd have to actually do research and pretend that I know what I'm actually talking about and ramble for, 30 minutes. But because you're on the show, I have someone I can actually
I get to pretend what I'm talking about.
You can pretend what you're
I know
talking
what I'm
about.
talking about and ramble for 30 minutes.
Okay, great. So you're studying for the bar right now.
Correct.
And you're about to take the bar exam to become an attorney.
Yep.
Because one thing America needs are more attorneys.
Well, they need some more attorneys in certain areas. Maybe not all areas, but there's certain ones that they will need more attorneys going forward, I believe.
Well, I'm really glad that you came here, because instead of staying home studying for the bar, you're actually here on the show because you think it's important for you to actually make a difference.
Yes.
And that's why you are becoming an attorney, is so that you can make a difference, right?
Yes, absolutely. I used to work for Guardian Ad Litem, and I was a volunteer Guardian Ad Litem, and I worked with some of the kids who had been abused, abandoned, or neglected by their parents, and the state of Florida had, taken them into their care. And over the time that I spent there, I realized that some of these children really needed a lot of help, and they needed attorneys who would turn up, they would do the work that would help these kids. A lot of the attorneys we have in the dependency system are really, really good, but they're just completely overwhelmed. There's so many kids in the system. So I decided that the best way to help them was to go to law school and become an attorney. And
well, that's fantastic.
Help them that way.
That's terrific. Now, most times on my show, I talk about issues and I give my spiel on it, but the show's called Fight Back because what I want to do is I want to encourage people to fight back against the system to make the world a better place in whatever way they can. For some people, it's being a writer, writing things. Sometimes people like to knock on doors. I've had people running for political office here locally, and they've been, trying to make a difference and make changes as well. And that's why I have you on the show tonight, because you actually are part of an organization locally here in Pasco County that's trying to make a difference.
Yes, I am one of the directors of Pasco Proud. Pasco Proud is a non-profit that we founded in order to run Vote Fest, which we ran at Gildogs.
Now, you're the vice president, right?
Yep, I am.
So you're the Mike Pence of
I don't know that I'd go that far. We don't really work like that. Like, we all kind of do our own thing and then come back together. It's just we had to have a list of what everybody did to register with, I guess, the companies.
So Pasco Proud started as a get the vote out type of organization?
Pasco Proud started as really what we wanted to do was we wanted to encourage our community to be involved. And really the whole driving force of Pasco Proud was to help give a voice to the people in our society who are disenfranchised. There are a huge amount of people in Pasco who are disenfranchised, whether that's from poverty, whether it's from race, whether it's from being homeless. There are so many reasons why there are a lot of people in Pasco that are disenfranchised.
Now, does Pasco still have the second largest homeless population of any county in the state of Florida?
I believe it does. I haven't seen the new numbers from the latest pet count. The pet count is a point-in-time count where every county goes out and they count their homeless people. And for Pasco, it's the Homeless Coalition that does that. I took part in the previous pet count where I believe the numbers were that we had the second largest. I also believe the numbers were lower this time, but there's a number of factors that could have caused those numbers to be lower, including things like the Sheriff's Department going out to help count the people.
Okay, now
because homeless people don't like to come out when their sheriff's about. So,
now you recently, I guess in the last couple months, met with Sheriff Naco in Pasco County, the Sheriff of Pasco County.
I did.
About the way that law enforcement has been engaging with the homeless population.
Yes, I did, and it was a meeting. It was a short meeting, but we met.
Okay,
we
let's cut through the crap. What's the problem going on between homeless and law enforcement? What are they doing?
I have no personal knowledge of exactly what's going on.
You're being a lawyer right now.
I am right now.
No one's going to sue you for slander or libel. What's going on with the homeless population? Are they being discriminated against or mistreated or treated illegally by law enforcement in Pasco County?
Pasco has a couple of ordinances on their books that severely impact the homeless. One of them is a panhandling ordinance. and the other is a trespass ordinance. And I and some of my colleagues have concerns about the way the trespass ordinance in particular is being administrated.
How's it being administrated?
Basically, homeless people can get a trespass warning, and if they are found back in that place, they will be taken to jail. Pretty much, that's what's happening.
Okay, so in other words, if a homeless person was hanging out in front of your restaurant and you don't like them there, you can call up the police and say, I want that person trespassed. The cops will come out, give them a warning. If they don't leave or they come back, they will be arrested.
Yes.
Okay.
But then you also would fast forward to another situation where there are certain property owners who have signed an agreement with the sheriff that the sheriff can trespass people from their property whenever the sheriff wishes.
So it's not so they're basically giving up their own right to tell someone to stay away and delegating it to the sheriff's office.
Yes.
So in other words, if you own a restaurant, you can contact the sheriff and say, hey, anybody you don't want hanging out front of the restaurant, you have the right on my behalf.
Absolutely.
By yourself, sheriff or deputy Jones or whatever.
Yep.
You have a right to tell these undesirables, get away from this property.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing about that. That's okay if it's a restaurant or if it's an office or if it's a home.
Right.
But when the property concerned is actually a soup kitchen for the homeless, I feel that there's a bit of a grey area there, because there's a big sign up saying homeless people can come here and be fed, and the sheriff can pick them up and take them to jail when they come there.
Now, is this because the property owners are sick and tired of every time there's an undesirable having to get on the phone and call 911 and get the sheriff to come out, that they decided it'll be easier for us to just delegate and let the sheriff take care of it? Or is this the sheriff's office on their own going to people saying, hey, guess what? We notice there's people out front and we can take care of that situation. You don't have to worry about it.
I would need to speculate at this point, but my consideration is that it's maybe not the sheriff's department on their own. I believe that the county commission are playing a role in this, because some of these people have been asked to sign these trespass waivers by members of the county commission. That's what I've heard.
So the county commissioner, like Catherine Starkey and her friends, who are all Republicans, let's face it, every single one of them is Republican, they go out and they talk to the property owners and they kind of convince them to sign these waivers, and then the sheriff allows his deputies to have the discretion as to who to trespass and who not to trespass.
I believe that's how it's working, yeah.
Or is the sheriff basically telling the deputies, this is what you do?
Some of these property owners don't even live in Florida. Some of these property owners are in far-flung states on the other side of the country, so clearly don't know when there's a homeless person on their property. A lot of these are vacant properties or properties at the other side of 19 where there's woods and things like that. So I find it difficult to believe that somebody in Indiana or Ohio actually knows what's going on in their vacant commercial property.
Now, if all these commercial properties tell people to get away, you're not allowed to be here, where are they supposed to go?
I don't know. We don't have a homeless shelter in Pasco. Well, we have shelters, but we don't have a low barrier long-term shelter for homeless people. We tried really hard to advocate for one, and then a particular community group decided that they didn't want it in their backyard, and then the mission for that shelter was actually changed to be a family shelter rather than for the individual adults. So it will be servicing far less people.
And most studies say it's the people who've been on the street the longest who are not in family units. They're the ones who need the help the most.
Absolutely. And also, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, but the people who have been on the streets the longest don't want help. That's not true. 85% of homeless people, if they are given the help that they need, will succeed.
Now, I remember going to they actually had a public forum that the county commissioners put on.
Yeah.
And people sat on the left side of the room who were against it. The people on the right side of the room were for
It was
the
horrible.
shelter.
It was horrible.
And I can't believe what some of the responses were from the people who were against this.
Yeah.
And they were just basically saying that their property values would go down, that you know,
which we also debunked by scientific evidence.
That crime would go up if they allow homeless people in their neighborhood,
yep.
and that they were completely against it. And yet, I look at the places that are the most inclusive communities in the country. You know, the places that are inclusive are the places which are growing and have got a better economy. it's places like Pasco County, which even though you're proud of Pasco, that's the name of your organization. Pasco County is not a inclusive county. The demographic is pretty much white, elderly, and very conservative, and the property values are down here. The places that are progressive, like San Francisco, which is very inclusive, which would have more homeless shelters than here, those places are booming.
Yep.
So so when you put homeless shelters and you put things to be more inclusive and more progressive in those places, that's actually helping the economy. And these people's property values will go up if they start putting things up
I believe
like that.
it is. And, you know, we have been using in the UK a model for a long time of socialised housing where people can go into government housing, get themselves on their feet, and eventually work to buy their house from the council. And this has been a really successful programme in the UK. I don't believe the county here has or is prepared to use any of its housing stock to house homeless people. I know that there's a lot of people talking about things that we can do, but at the moment it just seems to be constantly talking, and nothing actually happening. But then if you look, there's also a situation, I believe, in, I think it's Wesley Chapel, where they were promised a recreation centre 14 years ago, and I guess they're still arguing over that after it was approved 14 years ago. So
now let's say mom and pop's restaurant. They don't want the homeless people there. So NACO sends his sheriffs out or his deputies out, and they arrest the person. What normally happens to this homeless person who gets arrested?
From what I can work out, the first time that they go to deal with that homeless person at that specific place, that they'll give them a trespass warning, which I believe allows them 30 days to appeal that warning. But the appeal wouldn't go to the court, it would go to an administrative hearing.
And these people have no money.
They have no money.
They're not giving a couple grand to an attorney to file this.
Oftentimes they can't even afford $150 bail to get out of jail once they get taken in there.
And people do go to jail for this.
Yes.
They get arrested and driven to Land O'Lakes.
Yes.
And put in jail.
And normally all their belongings are left where they were arrested as well.
Okay. Now, the people who are conservatives, who are fiscal conservatives, who like to keep taxes low and are against government spending, what's basically happening is that the government is paying to house these people.
Yeah.
To give them meals, to give them shelter, to pay for them to have a public defender, and then the sheriff has to transport these people from wherever they get arrested to the county jail, and then transport them over the little road to go to court, and the public defender and the clerk's office and the court reporters and everyone's involved.
You know, and also a thing that I would mention is that I'm sure that these little cases are putting an incredible strain on the state attorney's office as well.
Right, the state attorney's office, instead of
who is
going
supposed
after
to prosecute actual criminals,
right,
rather than just people who are unfortunate enough not to have anywhere else to go.
Any idea how much this is actually costing the taxpayers of Pasco County?
I have no idea.
Okay, but they're basically doing it just so that mom and pop who don't like people hanging out in front of their restaurant so they can have a nice view. They're actually acting as a private security force for a private company.
You could look at it that way. Yeah. You absolutely could. I mean, I'm sure that people want to be able to secure their premises, but there's a lot of fear attached as well. That's what I find the most when I speak to people. They're scared of homeless people. What they don't understand is homeless people are in our communities. We interact with them every single day.
And, you know, as a board-certified attorney, you know, I've represented homeless people, and I see crimes committed by people. And homeless people do not commit violent crimes. They're the victims of violent crimes. You hear about, you know, a bunch of teenagers get boozed up or drunk, and they just beat the hell out of a homeless person because they think it's fun. They think it's funny. But you don't see the homeless person committing crimes. The only crimes homeless people commit is maybe they might steal a loaf of bread, or they might just to survive, or trespassing. But serious crimes are not committed by the homeless. You know, you never hear of somebody who's homeless getting drunk and beating the shit out of their wife. You don't hear about homeless people killing somebody because they get drunk behind the wheel and they run over somebody.
I mean, I think that there are probably, the same as in the rest of society, you're going to have, you know, the same type of crime in the homeless society that you see everywhere else.
Why do you think the homeless population is so large in Pasco County compared to other parts of Florida?
Probably because the homeless people in Pasco County find it incredibly hard to get assistance, to get help, to get on their feet. Everything is very compartmentalised. The Homeless Coalition are putting together, or have put together, a continuum of care which tries to bring all of the service providers together. The problem being that we still don't have a low barrier navigation centre where homeless people can come to get help with maybe
what would happen there?
Meeting the public defender, getting driver's licenses, you know, a place where they could send and receive mail. You know, they would have social services in there. This is the sort of assistance that the homeless people need. And there's a large segment of the homeless population that are veterans. There are, and there are a lot in Pasco. But that's a situation, you know, in and of itself, which is very extreme. It goes all the way back to the military and how we deal with people who, when they come out the military, if they have PTSD, if they have other, you know, psychological issues that are very common when people come out the military. In actual fact, I am currently undertaking a master's in law in Homeland and National Security law. And I have been working on a project with another student in the master's program to look at something we could put in place for the military to try to reduce the numbers of people coming out of the military with PTSD. Because obviously the majority of our homeless veterans either have PTSD or substance abuse issues that have stemmed from PTSD, you know, and various other problems. Now, a lot of the people who aren't in the military who are homeless, they have mental health problems as well. Absolutely. And a lot of them don't have the ability to get treatment for their mental health because they're too poor, they don't have health insurance. Yep. The governor refused to expand Medicaid to the poor in our state. So, you know, a lot of our homeless problem is caused because of a lack of proper health care. But people in the military, they have access to the VA. What reason is a person suffering who has the ability to get health care and get proper medication and still have problems that can't be overcome? I mean, I really can't speak to that in great detail because I have never served in the military. I have some very good friends who you know, have also struggled with, you know, a lot of the, you know, getting themselves back on their feet when they come out the military, or maybe have health problems or mental health problems, you know, and I see this overarching sort of concept coming from them that they don't want to ask for the help because they should be the last people that get helped because that's what they're used to. And while I think it's super honourable, I feel that we're just not serving our veterans the way that we should be. Oh, no way. And, you know, and this is not a problem that is solely in America. The same thing has happened in the UK. We have a dramatic amount of former soldiers who have PTSD. The suicide rate is sky high. You know, the substance abuse is sky high. Oh, there's mental health. I mean, it's really, really bad. There's a commercial on TV. It's called the Wounded Warriors commercial, and it's a good cause. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about our veterans. I mean, they deserve everything we can give them. But this commercial, they're going on television and they're saying, "Please help, write a check to help the Wounded Warriors." This guy was paralyzed. He served over in Iraq, and now and help it, and give a check. And I'm outraged by that because they should not need to be going on television begging the public to write a check. If you serve our nation and you get hurt as a soldier, you should be taken care of by the government, period. Absolutely. You know, and I don't care what it costs. That's number one on the budget. You can't afford new bombs? Sorry, we take care of our veterans first. You need food stamps or you need this? Sorry. Veterans come first. If we got to raise taxes in order to pay for our veterans, they sacrifice their lives and look how they hurt their well-being to help you. They come first. I would agree. You know, and yet these people are all gung-ho. They're wanting to be patriotic and stand during the national anthem and hate the football players who kneel, and they're for being patriotic, and they shout USA, USA like they did yesterday 10 times during Trump's speech on television. And yet, these heroes come home and they don't want to stroke the pen and pay for them to have the adequate services that they need. And that's outrageous. And you know, it's funny because when you speak to veterans... See, I'm getting all worked up now. I know you are. Some of them have a different experience with the VA. Some people think the VA is fantastic. But what I've noticed is a lot of the people with the more severe problems and the more severe health concerns, they're the ones that find the VA to be more difficult to deal with. But then I also think, from just a societal level, that healthcare in America is incredibly complicated and difficult to deal with for everybody. And if they are having the same problems that a non-veteran is having, you know, it's something that has to be looked at, because
I think it's stupid that if you're a veteran, you have to go to the VA.
Yeah.
Now, I think the VA is probably the best if you're dealing with amputees and artificial limbs. No one's better than the VA.
Yeah.
Or dealing with post-traumatic stress, I'm sure they have the best psychologists and psychiatrists to deal with that. But if you're just a regular veteran and you have a heart attack or a stroke or you got the flu, you should be able to go to any hospital or any doctor without having to go to the VA. And you know, in my opinion, I'm for Medicare for all or universal health care. And the only difference is if you're a regular citizen, you've got to have a copay or whatever if you're part of Medicare. If you're a veteran, that should be free. You give veterans a card. They can go to any doctor they want to in the country. They can go to any hospital they want in the country. They show their card, and then the government gets billed.
But here's the thing, anybody should be able to go to any doctor they want.
Sure they should.
I mean, that is a no-brainer.
Right.
You know, I've had situations, in fact, just recently, where I needed to see an ophthalmologist, but I needed to see a specific ophthalmologist, and they were out in network with my
But I'm like,
insurance
veterans
policy.
should have no copay, though. No copay for
Absolutely.
veterans. No deductible
Nobody
for
should have a
veterans.
copay.
Well, I can understand having a copay or whatever, because if someone's crazy and they just want to go to the doctor every day because they just are, you know, hypochondriac, okay, you have to have some skin in the game, or else you'll abuse the system.
But you know what? I don't think that's true. I think when the healthcare is freely accessible for all, people don't go to the doctors as much. Like, they really don't, because they know if there's something really wrong, they'll be able to go to the doctor.
Well, maybe you're right.
Whereas when you haven't got that access, you're spending all this time on Dr. Google, you're thinking, oh my God. I mean, I had a friend of mine phone me one day, this was a man, and he said to me, Susie, I think I have cervical cancer. I said, what do you mean you have cervical cancer? He said,
this is a guy.
I went onto the website and all the symptoms for cervical cancer, I have them. So I think I have cervical cancer. I'm like, dude, you don't have a cervix.
I think I'm going through male menopause right now.
I was like, so you'd be hard pushed, you know? But I mean, these are things, people go online and they find their own diagnoses, which are sometimes completely ridiculous. And if they could just go to a doctor, all of that stuff would not happen.
You go online, you think you got everything. No matter what it is, I got that. Right. I gotcha.
But you know, but the thing is, I also think there has to be a level of education involved in this as well. And I think this is where a lot of this problem stems from, is the fact that we're not teaching children about their bodies properly. You know, we're not teaching them about sexual health. We're not teaching them about really any of the stuff that's uncomfortable.
Sure. Well, I've heard people say that, oh, my children are afraid of the homeless. I'm like, well, why is that? Why don't you engage and talk to them about why they're homeless?
Absolutely.
Have a conversation with these people.
Absolutely. Because quite frankly, I guarantee that most people have had daily interactions or weekly interactions with homeless people and not even realized. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the homeless people aren't aligning themselves in just in little camps. Homeless people are in our communities. They're our friends, they're our neighbors, you know, and that is the thing that people are not understanding.
And people are, you know, most people think, oh, they're just a bunch of drug addicts and a bunch of alcoholics just begging on the street so they can get a fix. That's what people think. They won't make eye contact when the person's holding up the sign, standing next to their car at the stoplight. And
at the last pet count 2 years ago, there was a man who filled out one of the questionnaires, and he'd been, I think, something like a CAD technician. And because he had a medical problem with his eyes, he lost his job. And a CAD technician makes a lot of money. But he lost his job, he separated from his wife, and he ended up living in the woods. And this was somebody who had never had any intention of being homeless, but it happened simply because he lost his job.
I saw some statistic. They say that most people can't afford a $500 emergency.
That's right. I mean,
and I mean, people don't have money in their savings accounts
it's
anymore.
living paycheck to paycheck.
People don't have, you know, the lucky people might have 50 grand in a 401k. Most people have zero in a 401k. Companies no longer provide you a job from the day you graduate from high school till the day you retire. Basically, people jump around from job to job without benefits, no pension plan funded unless you pay for it yourself, and so nobody has these safety nets.
And here's the thing about that, and it is a safety net. So, for instance, obviously I'm not from here originally.
Right.
In my country, in Scotland, which is only half of my country anymore because now I'm an American citizen, they have a safety net there.
Right.
They have the National Health Service. They have, you know, job seekers allowance, disability, all this stuff we have here.
But we have nothing here. I mean, we have Social Security, we got some benefits, and they want to cut it as much as possible.
And we have what's called national insurance, which is the equivalent of Social Security. It will pay your pension and things when you're older. And
I have to cut you off right now because we are actually running out of time. Okay. And this is getting really good. I wish we had another half hour.
Damn, I wish we had another half hour.
Would you like to come back and come on the show and we could talk about other issues that you've been fighting for in Pasco County? Because you're a hero. You're actually trying to help people less fortunate than yourself, and that's why you went to law school to help
people. Do we have
people.
time for me to plug my new thing that we're doing?
Yes, you got 1 minute to do it. Go for it.
So Pasco Pride is going to be establishing a women's network for women-owned businesses in Pasco. It will be a progressive women's network, so I just want to put that out there because we are going to limit the membership to progressive women because a lot of progressive businesses are really feeling the heat right now. And we don't have that same network that some of the other people have. So we are going to be working on that and working on, you know, women's issues, period poverty, you know, abortion rights, all of that sort of stuff.
Terrific. Well, thanks for coming on, and we will see you guys next week, okay? Because we're here on Fight Back, and we're here every week. And if you want to see Suzie come back on the show, give us some comments, and I'll make sure that we'll postpone her bar taking. No. She'll come. Next time we have Suzie on the show, she will be a lawyer, and maybe she'll give me a job one day. Okay. So see you next week. Don't put your head in the sand. Rise up and learn how to fight back. See you next time. Bye.